Okay, on the show today, I'm very happy to have on Stan Tatkin. So, Stan is a couples expert known for his work on attachment, stuff to say around babies, romance. I read his book, Your Brain on Love, and it was super, super eye-opening for me. So, Stan, welcome.
Thank you, Mark. Thank you for having me.
Let's start a little bit with your story, Stan. Like, how did you get interested in what you do now?
Oh, that's a long story. In the beginning, no, I was a musician in my early years. I came from a musical family, so I started very, very early, and then I quit around 27, and then went back to school and never looked back. I fell in love with the field of psychology, and so it's been a long path of working inpatient with people that were attracted to someone called John Bradshaw. Some people know who he was, and then ran a drug and alcohol program for a charter hospital, and then I started working with really difficult patients that had disorders of the self. And then I studied psychobiology, the autonomic nervous system, and neuroscience, in particular, infant brain development and brain development throughout the lifespan. And so that led me to couples eventually because I wanted to do prevention work with caregiver infant pairs. And I could not get them into my practice because here, at least, people are not really good with prevention. So I decided I would focus on the adult pair bonding system, and that would be a way I could help kids. And also, I became fascinated. So this has been my research. This is all I do, all I teach about. We have an institute around the teaching of this psychobiological approach, and that's how I got here.
Did I also read that we have a teacher in common, Shinzen Young? So you're a meditator.
I
Is that right? Yeah. I
Do you
can
know
kind of fly.
Shenzhen?
Yeah, yeah, I've done some work with him. I rate him very highly, actually. As someone who's spoken to a lot of meditation teachers, he's really top tier and very logical with a good sense of humor. So
We
that's
go back years, many years. Yeah.
yeah, yeah, you've got a little bit of his vibe actually. So when I read that, I was like, ah, cool. So adult pair bonding. Let's start at the beginning. What is the heart of that? Adult pair bonding. How does it happen? What goes wrong?
Oh, well, we are human primates, and as human primates, we tend to pair bond, especially within herds. So we're herd animals that pair bond. It doesn't mean that we can't be polyamorous, but we generally are dyadic creatures. And that is nature's attempt to continue the species. The attachment system, which your listeners probably have heard of, has to do with nature's glue. It's a biology that holds us together so that we can stick together long enough to raise a baby and also come together as a group for protection against the environment and predators. So that's basically it. We are interested in relationships. Nature's not so much. And so it's kind of up to us to learn how to be in relationship with each other, love relationship, but not just, and how to not go to war, because as a species, we tend to be very warlike, very aggressive. We have an extremely acute, as do all animals, extremely acute survival instinct, um, with lots of mechanisms to keep ourselves safe. Unfortunately, some of those mechanisms aren't friendly.
And is it one system that kind of bonds us with romantic partners, friends, parents, and then the sort of, I heard you mention like wider group, which might be like in group, out group, tribal, is that kind of one basic system?
Well, that's interesting because if you study the human as a primate in our history on the planet, you would see that we're primarily aggressive and warlike, moody, fickle, selfish, self-centered, opportunistic, easily influenced by groups, and racist. Um, that is how we are built, right? We otherize. We otherize anything that is too familiar to ignore, but too different to live with. That's a quote from Harari,
That
actually.
is nice. That is nice. Oh,
And
incredible.
that could be our kids, that could be our neighbor, it could be our spouse, it could be anybody. And so we tribalize. We especially tribalize in groups that have a shared meaning, a shared vision, a shared purpose. And then when that doesn't have a shared meaning, a shared purpose, shared vision, then people will fight within the in group, and that's part of the problem.
Yeah, I've seen my share of the worst side of that in around the world.
Yes. Yeah, we're
Um,
now. Yeah.
yeah, no, I mean, personally, but it's how do we bring together these two visions of human nature? So on the one hand, generally sort of more liberal people often say we're wired for love and we're born to connect, and the Buddhists would say we have original goodness and Buddha nature. And then the conservatives on the other side would say, well, actually, nature tooth and claw, like as you just said, a lot of our history is very bloody. We tend to tribalize. We are murderous creatures without a doubt. I'm aware of both sides of me subjectively, if I'm being honest. And often I sort of hear one side of the story. It's not very sort of integral. So what would be the way to sort of, and they're clearly no one's smart enough to be totally wrong, as Mr.
No,
Wilbur would say. So how do we bring those two visions of human nature together when it comes to love and violence?
I think it's understanding. I think it is a higher level of moral reasoning that many around the world will achieve. Um, but we also have to understand the nature of nature. It's not personal. We think in terms of good or bad, right or wrong. Nature doesn't. And so we just have to see human beings as they are and learn how to organize in such a way that protects us from each other, right? That's what religion in the beginning did, right? Thou shalt not kill, bringing tablets down to the masses and scaring them with an Old Testament God. Well, that certainly scared people enough to be civilized, right? That was the beginning before laws. So so we've always had social contracts in order to group together in groups larger than, let's say, 100 and 150. Otherwise, people will do bad things. They rob, they steal, they lie, they do all sorts of things. And so we have to have laws, ways of governing ourselves, hopefully in a system that's fair, just, and perhaps even mutually sensitive. If not, then it's a dictatorship, right? Which is some people think today is easier. So I say the answer to that is to not be naive. That when we're pair bonding, when we're coupling, we have to plan for our devils, not our angels, because devils we are when we aren't feeling well, when we're under stress, when we're in duress, when we're scared to death, right? We can start to revert to a one person system that is pro self only and not pro relationship. That is a fact of the brain and of the autonomic nervous system. So we have to understand that and put measures in to hold us to account and to keep us from harming each other, even if it's inadvertent, even if it's by accident. That's how we do it.
Nice. Okay, so our nervous system has a sort of pro me core of just me above everything else, and then sort of extensions of circles beyond that, right? Where it gets circle and then it gets a bit more inclusive, and there's a sort of possibility to extend that.
Think of
Um,
it, yeah,
that,
think of it as a threat system,
mhm.
which by the way, I don't mean threat like you're coming at me with a hatchet. Threat could be small t threat where you're looking me askance. You're looking at me with a frown. You're pointing your finger at me. You're not looking at me. You're turning your back to me. All of those things can represent threat to me. And so you might imagine how many of those cues are around us at any given time. Um, we're built on memory. Everything we do is by memory. Very little that we do is thought through with higher cognitive mechanisms that are really energy expending. So most of the time we're automatic. We're automatic going through life, being able to do several things at once, um, and looking for more novelty to excite us. And then that's automated as well. Uh, Most of the time, we're not thinking. So we are reflexive, we are automatic. And if threatened, we will do exactly what we saw in our childhood and what we experienced. It's not really rocket science, it is what it is.
Mhm. When you say threat, you don't just mean physical threat, like fight or flight from someone. It could be, for example, someone's arguing with their partner and, just that social engagement is shut down. There isn't the same kind of looks. There isn't the same kind of responsiveness. There's a judgmental tone. Name some of those social threats, because I think I'm just now at 44 realizing how I trigger that, particularly in romantic partners, employees, all sorts of people. I'm just starting to go, oh shit, no wonder they reacted badly because they experienced that as a threat.
Well, we can't see our faces. We can't see our bodies. We don't know what we sound like. And even if we did, we don't have the same experience as the other person. So one person's whispers, another person's yelling. That's how we are. And so we have to understand that, first of all, our communication is terrible. We're mostly misunderstanding each other most of the time, really. Our memory is terrible. Always will be. The way we even record experience is horrible. So fighting over memory is stupid because we're both probably wrong. And our perception is constantly governed by state of mind. So it's like a funhouse mirror. If I feel angry, I see angry faces. And so we can never be sure that we're right about anything. But the hubris of human beings is that we think we're right, and we'll fight to the death. We'll do that, we'll put being right more important than our relationships sometimes, often, and we'll ruin our relationships because of it. So there is there is this phenomenological thing of I can't know, how you're going to react to me. I have to learn you if I want to be an expert on you, and then I can start to talk for you. I can start to realize what threatens you. I can start to work with that, and I can learn you like I would an animal. I become competent. But the average person, we don't have time to learn, and therefore we don't know our effect on them. I will say that if you've ever noticed when you're depressed and you're walking around, people don't look at you with a smile. They don't look very friendly to you. When you are happy and you're just smiling, everyone's kind of friendly.
Yeah, people always go on holiday and say, people were so nice in X country. And I was like, no, no, you were just on the sangria. You were happy. I mean, I was gonna open this interview like I did my last interview at a couples council by just saying, why are relationships so goddamn hard? I was really feeling that today personally. And you've sort of answered it, like we're conditioned from fucked up childhood, we're conditioned by our parents. We're in a culture, perhaps a wider culture that is not very pro-social in many ways. So I was just asking yesterday, where's a great place to raise a child? And nobody said Britain or America. People were saying the Mediterranean or Bali or, Slovenia.
Norway.
Yeah, someone said Finland, Sweden. So we're in a sort of culture which doesn't support it. We have a neurological wiring that quite easily kicks back into a slightly psychopathic, mean, antisocial self. And we're seeing through distorted lenses. Our
Yeah.
memory doesn't work, and we're not paying attention. I mean, what chance have we got, mate?
The whole idea of what I'm talking about is to hopefully cut ourselves a break and not blame each other so much. Um, yeah, when we understand what the rules are, what the culture is, we'll blame each other for not sticking to the rules. And perhaps that is reasonable. But for most of what we do, it isn't mostly purposeful, right? We mostly don't do things on purpose. We're doing them reflexively, automatically, in reaction to. And so, by not understanding how the brain works, by not understanding how human beings operate, we can make a lot of mistakes in our appraisal, and then we start to co-opt medical, psychiatric, psychological terms and use them as sledgehammers. I'm with a narcissist. I'm with a codependent. I'm with someone who's on the spectrum. That's the disorder du jour. And so, our tendency again to categorize and then otherize is famous, but we're all pain in the asses. If you're a human primate, you're an asshole on some level. but you're also wonderful. This is not to say that we're not incredibly, amazingly brilliant and able to generate things and do things that are unseen in the animal world. But like I said, nature doesn't care about positives or negatives. Every feature we have can also be a bug. For instance, our brains compare and contrast constantly and also become aware of what we don't have. We're always aware of what is missing. That's a feature if we're hunter gatherers, if we're looking for a place to live. It's a feature if we're trying to decide on a career. It is a bug when we are trying to be happy with what we have or with our partners and not continue to compare and contrast. So everything that we do very well can also be a problem in another area of life. That's really the truth about it. Otherwise, no, we're not psychopaths. We're just animals.
Yeah, yeah, verdict to a state. I learned a lot from your book about attachment theory. I've heard it described as cats and dogs before. That's one way I think
Yeah.
I've talked about it. I think you talk about it as waves and anchors and islands. Do you want to briefly describe that model? Because I think it's just super useful for anyone to. I know you probably answered this a million times, but I think it's useful for listeners.
No, it's fine. Yeah, so the names have been changed to protect the boring. The terms really come from attachment theory, but the terminology in attachment theory is a bit wonky and could be misinterpreted as pejorative. So we changed it to islands, anchors, and waves. Islands being people from the distancing group of insecure attachment. Waves being from the clinging group, a general group that we could probably apply a lot of theory to, and it would still make sense, right? Clinging group. On the insecure side also, and then anchors being a large group of secures, people who are unburdened, generally speaking, from the fears of insecurity that those who are insecure carry around and can sometimes cause them trouble, not because they're difficult beyond measure, but because they have a set of fears based on real experience that if I depend on you, I will lose my freedom, I'll lose my independence, my autonomy, I'll lose my stuff. I'll be intruded upon, interfered with. I won't be able to be alone. I like my alone time. Um, I'm conflict avoidant. I don't want to get in any kind of conflict, so I fly under the radar. There are all sorts of behaviors that we know from studying babies that in the distancing group we can predict. It's very, very predictable in terms of these behaviors, but they're just defenses. Um, on the wave side, I'm afraid of you leaving me, of withdrawing from me, of not wanting me, loving me, that I'm not good enough. You're going to punish me. You're going to, right? You're going to, and so that makes me also do things that might be difficult for you if you don't understand. But these aren't set in stone. Not attachment styles are not personality; they're adaptations to one's environment. And again, nature, it's not pathogenic. It's like where does a tree bend to get to the light, right? You wouldn't judge that. So this is again something that's predictable. Behaviors are predictable based on what we study in babies and babies with their relationship very early with their caregiver. We start to see the patterns, the trajectories that have a generalized.
Do you think learned,
Pro-
not genetic?
Say again?
Learned, not genetic.
No, it's not genetic. No, it's something I learned right away through the thousands and thousands of interactions I had with my caregiver starting as an infant. And then because the caregiver is rather stable, these interactions continue as my brain develops and I begin to consolidate how this culture works. In this culture family, we don't do neediness. So I don't. I don't accept it. I feel ashamed if I were to be needy because it would be rejected. In this family culture, performance and appearance means a lot. So I feel like I'm a performance animal. I feel like I'm needed but not wanted. In this family, I have to take care of a parent who's depressed or has a drug or alcohol problem. and I cannot be my own person. They need me close by. So it is, we adapt as infants because our lives depend on it. We don't have a choice. We're mere mortals, and then we're dealing with the gods, our parents, the giants. They call the shots. The problem is that we will often go through life as if we were still in that system, operating in those kind of relationships that were set by those people, and mistake our adult partnership for an asymmetric relationship, which it is not.
Yeah.
And one that you and I have to co-create the culture from anew, to fit our current life as adults.
Letting your hurt 5-year-old run your current adult life probably isn't the best policy. But let me a couple more clarifications then. So it's, as I envisioned it, it's not a typology, it's more of a scale, right? So it's not like you're this or that there's a scale. So I know people who are more or less extreme kind of on these different sides. But is it that it does tend to be that it's not just a preference, that you do tend to have there's a clear kind of side. I don't know any anchors, I don't think, personally. I don't think I know
Oh,
anyone.
there are plenty. Yeah, there are plenty.
The secure attachment, they're not on the scale at all.
Well, they are on the scale, but remember, secure as measured has a wide berth, has a wide,
So they're still
and
on the
so
scale, but they're not so on. That would classify as an anchor if they're not too far off either side.
yeah, there are certain ways we can tell whether somebody has moved out of the secure zone, and that is, um, they no longer accept people in the same way as they are. They have a harder time dealing with certain personalities. They are beset by fears of abandonment or engulfment. They lose the ability to have insight, the kind of insight, metacognition, that's able to know and track what I'm thinking and feeling as I'm acting, like a witness state.
So that's in a
Um,
state. So you see it as a state one goes into and out of. So could I be in a secure attachment state as opposed to a insecure attachment state? Not so
yeah,
much, not so much
yeah.
a
It's
personality feature, character.
think think of think of secures as, because I'm not encumbered by you moving away from me or coming towards me or holding me, right? I'm not encumbered by that. I can swing easily. I can go from being alone to interacting with you without distress and without feeling any kind of fear. I can go from interacting with you to being alone without having a problem with the transition, right? I have more resources to spare because I'm not constantly anxious about my relationships. I am more resilient. I have a better sense of humor. I get along with people better, right? And so think of it as resources that as babies, children, adults go through any kind of difficulty that we might term as traumatic, or that is a life that is burdened by fears and restrictions to either our freedom, our autonomy, or to our feeling of secure, to be able to have a secure base. We're spending resources that will interfere with development, right? I can't possibly develop as much because I'm preoccupied. I'm using resources to deal with a stress system that's always on. That's the idea here. So insecures are less resilient because they're carrying around a burden constantly that is draining resources that would otherwise be available for mobility and for other things, creativity and development.
Hard work. Now, I'm imagining listeners are thinking about themselves and their partner, or maybe themselves and their child, someone else. And they're probably thinking, which one of these am I? Sort of magazine. Can we do a quick and dirty magazine style? If you were to, obviously, it's not diagnostic, it's not clinical, but what would be, when I've presented this to people, they very quickly go, that's me, I'm a cat, or that's me, I'm an island. Like they very quickly kind of get it. So if it's not too offensive to your intellectual rigor, could we do a?
Oh, yeah, I can do it. And by the way, the only people that we really worry about, and I say with a small W, are dyed in the wool. They're rigid. They're one trick ponies. They're so far into that that realm of insecurity that they can do nothing other than that. Everybody else is ishy, right? So we start to get into secures. We're ishy. We're kind of islandish, wave-ish, um, but we're still anchors, right? So let me play the island. I'm an island. I grew up in a family that put the self first over relationship. It goes way back in my family, and performance or appearance was very important to the family culture, at least one parent. It was extremely important. I had to regulate at least one of my parents' self-esteem because shame, exposure, being wrong, all of those things are tender areas in my family culture. We don't like to be wrong. We feel judged. We judge. We're very judgy. We're very critical, and we've been criticized. And so we tend to feel, or I'll say I tend to feel attacked when I'm exposed. I don't like it. I like to be alone. I like my alone time. I've spent a lot of time alone, and I tend to do something called auto-regulate. I go into a slightly dissociative state. And the reason I like it and it's comforting because it's you're not involved, another person. I feel too much interpersonal stress. So I need to get away to resource myself. That's not, by the way, extroversion, introversion. This is another thing. I keep a lot of secrets. I spend a lot of time in my head. I play a lot alone. And there are things I'm not going to tell you because I'm afraid if you knew, you wouldn't want to be with me. So I have a lot of secrets, and I tend to be very cautious about what I tell you because anything can and will get me into trouble with you. So I tend to be more compliant. I tend to act as if I will do what you want me to do, but I resent it. I cannot wait to get away and do my own thing. I tend to be myself outside of the orbit of my primary relationship because I'm conflict avoidant. I can't really be myself in this relationship. So I tend to feel like more myself. And when I get out, I feel too restrained, too throttled, too smothered in this orbit. And so I did that as a kid. I do that as an adult. I don't show a lot in my face if you ask me anything about myself because I don't want to show that. And my family probably didn't express very much. Um, anyway, I like going forward. I don't think about the past. Who cares about the past? I'm Don Draper from Mad Men, you know, or, you know, from whatever. Tomorrow's another day, right? We're always moving forward. And so I kind of live my life inside, not outside. I need to be in love relationships. I'm just afraid of what's going to happen. You're going to take my stuff, right? And so that's me on the island side.
Got it.
On
Islands, we all know a few. Waves.
on the wave side, I had to take care of at least one of my parents' emotional state. One of my parents were emotionally unavailable or upset, and they needed me perhaps to stay close. Maybe they weren't emotionally upset, but they needed me to be their doll, their close ally, their sweet child. They wanted me young. And so what was discouraged for me was to go out in the world and leave them. They wanted me close. So I had to give up my going out into the world and to grow up as a differentiated adult, right? So I tend to stay young. I am very ambivalent because my caregiver at once wanted me to be close and did a lot of skin to skin, eye to eye, face to face contact, and then would get frustrated with me and wanted me to leave them alone because they encouraged my clinging. I cling, and then I'm also an annoyance, right? I'm interfering with whatever they're preoccupied with. And usually they're preoccupied with their own sense of injustice. They themselves are waves. And so it's kind of a come here, go away. I get rejected a lot. I feel abandoned a lot. I feel punished a lot for being clingy or needy. But yet I'm confused because I was encouraged to be that way. So I grow up being a person in waiting. I will not take risks. I will not grab what's mine. I will wait for you to prove to me that you want me again and again and again because that insecurity is continuous. So I'm very afraid of rejection, but I do reject you. I'm negativistic. If you tell me how handsome I am, I'll say, okay, what do you want? You want something, don't you? right? I'll take anything positive and just throw it back at you, which makes you want to go away. I don't want you to go away. It's just my way of saying, if anything good happens to me, the next thing I think of is I'm going to lose it. So I have sort of a self-saboteur to keep me from being disappointed and let down. All right. So
Okay.
I break it with you before you'll break it with me, kind of thing.
Got it. And are the people that sort of swing between the two? Is it confused, they used to call it, I think, or is it tend to be sort of ish one way or the other?
Yeah, this all breaks down in couples because now we have a phenomenological intersubjective system that is more than the individuals. The system is reacting to itself. So you, Mark, I tend to be clingy. I start to become distancing. Am I an island? No. I tend to be distancing. You start to get more clinging. And the more clingy you get, the more distancing I get. The more distancing I get, the more clingy you get. We don't know exactly if we are islands or waves. We are reacting to each other dynamically. And if that's happening in both directions and it's moving, that's better than if it's stuck in one area, right? Stuck in one area.
Relational element to this too, so you could be more islandish in relation to someone else. I've definitely had partners
Correct.
who brought out a different side of me, and I've been like, oh, okay, I don't normally do this. And I'm imagining culturally as well. Like when you're describing
Yes.
islands, I was thinking of Eastern Europe, for example. I spent a lot of time in Russia, Ukraine, Poland, and I was thinking, okay, there's some pretty strong cultural factors there too.
In Eastern Europe, there tends to be more of the clinging group and more of the disorganized group due to father alcoholism in the Eastern area of Europe. And in Asia, it's very distancing in most parts, not all, but in most parts, very distancing. In the West, we're distancing. In the Mediterranean, France, Italy, there's a lot of distancing. It looks a lot of pro-social stuff, but like United States, this idea of rugged individualism and separateness is contagious, and so these are all normal. Again, all of this is normal. It's characteristic of one's environment and the culture and what I must do in order to be safe.
Interesting, interesting. I would have guessed some of those differently, so that's good to hear. All right.
That's according to a study.
No, I'll take your word for it. Um,
Eastern.
what do we do? So the next thing I can imagine listeners thinking is what I thought when I read the book. It's like, okay, I've got a partner. I think she's pretty much like this. And some of it was really practical. It was like, don't call their name from another room. Really specific
Yeah.
things. I stopped doing that, and my partner was like, "Thank you for not doing that." Like I was like, "Oh, I didn't realize it was a big deal." And so like the sort of what do we do if? So what do we do if, let's say, partner, boyfriend, girlfriend, whatever, is an island, and then what do we do if they're a wave? What are some things that are just going to make life more harmonious, whatever the
Um,
relationship?
Yeah, again, it's not a problem if your partner is either of these things. It's a problem that you don't know and understand them, and you don't know how to work with them. Just like you picked a dog. I'm not saying we're dogs, but kind of we are in some ways. You pick a dog, and the dog has had been mistreated and flinches. You're not going to whip the dog for flinching, right? And you're going to learn the dog to learn how to heal those things because you love dogs. We're not so kind with our adult partners as we are with babies and pets, right? Because we expect them to be easier than that and take care of themselves. But that's a mistake. So you're in my care. I'm in your care in the love interest area. That's why I wrote the book, In Each Other's Care. We're in each other's care. Therefore, I'm responsible for knowing how you work. I'm a Mark whisperer. I have to be because our survival depends on it. It's a practical reason. I have to know you. I have to be able to work with you if we're a team, because if you go down, I go down. And it doesn't make any sense for me to poke the bear and do all these things that make you worse. I want you better. And so I'm going to work with you in a way that actually heals the past instead of reinforce it. Most people won't do that. Most people do what everyone will do, and that is react to the behavior that is distancing, react to the behavior in front of them that looks threatening. I don't care why you do this. It's threatening to me. And so I'm going to react in turn. So that's That's the sad case of the average human being. We will make it worse. But if we know better and we understand why we're doing this, it doesn't make sense. We have to work together collaboratively or cooperatively, or we won't survive as a twosome. So the rules are different there. Does that
Mm,
make sense?
yeah, it does make some sense. I'm still just going, all right, what are we doing
Okay.
with each other?
Okay.
Give
I,
us,
I,
give us some cheap and
I
dirty, and then I really recommend people read the book for more, like genuinely. I'm not just plugging him, like really, but like
if you're
give people some gems.
okay, I realize what you asked now. Um, if you're a wave, I'm going to move toward you as a strategy, not away from you. Even though you push me away, I'm going to move forward on you because that's the correct movement that makes you feel wanted and safe, right? I'm going to go eye to eye, face to face. If you're a wave, you likely are soothed and regulated with touch and with eye contact and with words that work for you. So it's a very different thing. I'm going to stay in touch with you. I'm not going to trigger your abandonment fears. I know how to deal with you. I can let you wake me up or keep me up at 10 o'clock at night because you're asking, so how are we? 10 o'clock, I'm ready to go to sleep. I'm going to turn to you and I go, we're fine. I'm going to engage with you. And then I'm going to say, I'm so tired. I need to go to sleep. Come sleep with me. And there will be no problem there. If I need to move you, I'll kiss your hand. I'll look at you in the eye and I'll move you. Once I do that, I can move you anywhere I want because the friendliness preceded the move. If you're an island, I'm going to catch and release. I'm not going to wait for you to come out of your cave or your hole. I'm going to say, come here, look at me, tell me you love me, tell me I'm handsome, give me a kiss, make me believe it, and you can go now, right? I'm going to understand by showing you, I get it. I get your distancing. I get your fear of being trapped. I'm going to show you I'm okay with that. I understand it. I'm still going to get what I want, but I'm not going to shame you for this as if there's something wrong with you. I know you need your time alone. So there are all sorts of ways of working with islands without showing them that you don't get it and that you disapprove, because that's going to drive them further into distancing. That will do it. So I go to your side. I don't go right in front of you if you're in distress. Um, my word choice is different. My eye contact is different because I am respecting, what happens to you when you feel threatened, right? And so it's knowing who you're dealing with, who you picked. I have to know you and I have to work for you, not for what would work for me, right? And so there are all sorts of things that can be done when an island withdraws and just walks out. One strategy is to go into the room they're in, make it very clear you don't want nothing to do. You don't want to engage them anymore. You're not trying to fight. You're just going to sit there in parallel play, uh, and you're going to recover together. That an island will tolerate. What they won't tolerate is the impression that they have to respond to a demand, that they have to engage with you when they're flooded, right? That they have to perform. No, you don't need anything from me. We're just in recovery and I'll sit here, read my book. I'm perfectly fine. So they're all different strategies, but we have to be clever. And that starts with accepting who we're with and not wishing they were different.
Nice, nice. Yeah, I certainly find it very helpful to read some of these differences, and there's a few sort of face palm moments. I just I've had a couple of guests on talking about this issue. I really, listeners should listen to Adam Lane Smith's episode on attachment theory as well. That was a good one. And I'm still left going, God, relationships are really difficult. Even with some psychology background, some therapy, lots of embodiment tools, I still find myself behaving in arguments with partners in ways I regret. And I think, God, this is really tricky.
So
And
do I, by the way.
you do
Yeah,
as well. Yeah.
yeah, of course.
Obviously, it's trainable. We can get better at this stuff, but I find myself in some despair about the actual possibilities with it, if I'm honest. And that might be just personal stuff, but it's tough.
It's it once one understands the nature of these relationships and how they have to organize. You have to organize your relationship from the get-go. You know, relationships are a shared mythology. They don't exist in real terms. They exist in our heads. So you and I are the creators of the shared mythology. The creators, we have to create something together. We cannot just go in assuming that love will prevail. Um, we have to have an idea of why we are, not just what we are. Why are we? And where are we wanting to go? If we are pointing in two different directions, it won't work. If we have a deal breaker that can't be settled, it won't work, right? You want children, I never want children. That's a deal breaker, right? You want polyamory, I want monogamy. Neither of us are wrong or right, good or bad. It just can't work. So, so we have to organize together, not because not because we're alike, because we're not. We're different, totally different in many ways, but the differences are accepted and as such used as our superpower instead of a fighting place to fight. And we have to think as if our legs were bound in a three-legged race. That's the image. These relationships work best if if you imagine your inner legs are tied together and you have to move together or you don't move. You'd have to work together or you don't work. Anything I do is going to affect you and will affect me back. There is no separating those two things. Therefore, our fates are tied. We're a team, and a team works towards a mission, a vision. What are we? Why are we doing this? And where are we going at any given time? Without that, we'll fight. Without that, we'll fight. And so we have to change our vision, our idea of love relationships as a two-person psychological system of we and us, not simply I and you. Because if we start, you and I start to work on each other instead of a problem, we go to war. Everybody
Yeah,
will.
yeah. The shared
Yeah.
problem we're trying to solve together frame I found very helpful with partners. Let's give the parents some love. So a lot of parents listen to this. I'm sure they want to raise securely attached children. What do they do?
Have a good, secure, functioning love relationship first. Um, uh, Parenting is theater. The parents are exemplars of how to do relationships. The kids are watching. They'll do exactly what they see and what they experience with the brain development that they have at the time. And so, happy couple, happy parents, happy kids. Otherwise, the kids have to step in. So, uh, these parents have to be a couple that is in good order. That means they're organized hierarchically as the couple comes first above and beyond everything and everyone else. Why? Because the couple represents leadership. They're the top of the food chain, the roof of the house. If they are not in good order, everything and everyone suffers. So they have to put the oxygen mask on each other first, because otherwise everyone's screwed. Have to look at it that way, because as a metaphor, when generals fight, soldiers die. And so read in kids there. So it's incumbent on the partners to be good because they're showing how we do collaboration, cooperation, how we do humility, how we do repair by falling on our swords fully for the other person, how we put the relationship ahead of the self, because the relationship that we've created is supporting the self, right? And so we operate in a way that's very clear in terms of what is our culture, what is our ethos, what are our sets of relationship ethics, what are our commandments, what do we abide by, even though it's the hardest thing to do. And that's where you and I were talking about secure functioning being simple but difficult to do. It's predicated on growing up, being an adult, meaning I have to tolerate pain. I have to accept differences. I have to be able to grieve losses. I have to be able to hold impulses, and I have to be able to give up my pro self orientation for being pro relationship. In other words, I'm part of a team. It's not a solo sport.
Mm-hmm.
That's when things take off. That's when things take off, and partners can do much more together than they ever could do alone.
Nice.
I have personal experience with that, not just in my relationship, but in the relationships around me.
I saw two people in the street screaming at each other the other day, and there was a child, must have been 3 years old, looking up from a pram a couple of
Uh,
meters away, and I thought there's someone's future therapy client. But it was just so obvious that what was being modeled was profoundly unhelpful and was impacting the nervous system of that child. But almost
well,
stepped in, but usually doesn't end well when you try and step in those situations.
hopefully, if the parents can offset that, if they simply repair in front of the child,
Yeah, I didn't see
and
what how the rest of the day went. My sense was probably not well, but let's just finish with the big picture then. So we've had 100 years of therapy. It doesn't seem to be working. People are divorcing at higher rates. I really see massive amounts of awareness of at least therapeutic terminology. Young people are very well versed, I think, in, again, maybe at a shallow level for Instagram, but at some level, there's some awareness there. Um, Relationships don't seem to be getting better. Is that an illusion? Is there a case to be made that therapy is working slowly, kind of trickle down wisdom through society, um, or not? What's your take on that?
I think what dissolves relationships, whether it's love relationships or family relationships, is again and again the same thing. Organizing in a system that is too unfair, too unjust, too insensitive too much of the time will accrue threat memory and resentment. It'll happen no matter what. And we have to understand that that is how this works. It doesn't matter about your ideas about love. What matters is your ideas about getting along with others in a way that finds where you are the same and where you agree. Because the easiest thing for us to do is to focus on where we're different and where we disagree, and that's where we fight. Higher level of moral reasoning is finding where we are the same and where we agree, and that has been done since the beginning of organizations, right, of communities. It takes a higher level of discipline and thought. Then we have to put in place what we're going to do and what we're never going to do. So say us both, and organize around what you and I decide is either good, what's best, or what's the right thing to do, even though it's going to be the hardest thing to do. We do this thing whether we hate each other or not. We do this thing whether we're mad. We do, in all cases, it must be done. We do not do it because we feel like it. We want the best, what's good, what's right. And that's our construction, yours and mine, nobody else's. We have to set up how we're going to govern, and we legislate and we enforce. Without that, there is no system that will survive. None. People just don't understand how this works. Think of any union in a free and fair union of equals, of adults, that organizes or doesn't organize according to why are we doing this? What's the purpose of this? And where are we going? Oh, yeah, I want to do that, right? I want to do that. How are we going to get along? Oh, this is how we're going to do that. This is going to be the culture. Okay, I feel safe here. I feel safe here because safety and security is the first thing. We don't join a union of cannibals because why would we do that? We're going to get killed within our own union. So no, I want to feel safe. It has to feel like this is a culture I can live in, and we're going to win together. And I don't want to do what you're doing. As soon as that ends, I'm out, or
Yeah.
I embezzle, or I steal, or
We don't
I
have a shared religion. We don't have a shared cultural meaning. People have stopped having children as a result. They no longer believe in the culture. I'm pretty
yeah,
sure America's going to have a civil war within 2 years, looking at all the signs. I mean, there's a big divorce about to happen that could get quite bloody. But
no share, a lack of shared purpose and vision. People will tribalize,
mm, mm.
and they'll fragment. Yeah.
Stan, thank you so much for joining us. This is sort of, in some ways, sort of acutely painful for me for personal reasons to be thinking about attachment and all this stuff. But I hope that hasn't come across too much because I do really appreciate your time. And I've just, as I said, I've just spent a lot of time reading one of your books. I'm gonna ask you as soon as what's the next one I should be getting on the list. So yeah, where do people find you and your work and your stuff?
People can find me at any time at thepactinstitute.com. That's the PACT Institute.com. We train mental health professionals around the year with this approach, psychobiological approach. And my wife and I also do couples workshops constantly around the world online. And we do retreats like the one coming up in Portugal, where it's 8 days of working together, but 10 days of travel and fun. So we do that. And that's where you can find me. I want to say one last thing.
Go on. We have time. No.
If you're looking for a relationship, stop looking for the right person. Stop making a list of the right person. Start making a list of the perfect relationship. You want to imagine a perfect relationship, starting with safety and security, and then love, and then all the things you can think of in the terms of we do this together. We do this. It has to be without emotion of feeling, because you can't legislate feelings. It's all behavioral and measurable, right? So my wife and we can go to bed angry, but we have to at least touch toes at night. That has a very strong purpose to it, right? And we do it even if we don't feel like it. So, in some terms, there are big umbrella ideas of safety and security, of how we're going to govern each other with permission. And that's what you look for, and look for somebody who's willing to play and demonstrates it.
Nice.
That's what you want.
Nice. Stan, thanks for joining us.
All right. Be well, Mark. It's a pleasure.